This is my immediate reaction to the UFC 319 card that just happened over the weekend. This was an insane card, let's get into it. I know I'm a day late to this, but I was over in Paris doing some traveling and sparring Surugan, getting him ready for Tom Aspinall, but better late than never. This was honestly the best card of the year so far. It truly did live up to the hype. I know for some people the main event didn't. Just to say for the record, I disagree. But we'll get into that, man. I went 3 and 5 on my official main card predictions. Can we please give me a... That's a clap, by the way. 3 out of 5, that's not too bad, considering I've been on a bit of a bad run with my predictions lately. Kicking off the main event, we had Sakura versus Tim Elliot. Tim Elliot wins by submission, and Sakura had no answers on the grappling. Now, going into this fight, I really expected Sakura to be too much on the feet for Tim Elliot, and throughout majority of the fight, that was kind of the case. He was having a lot of success on the feet. He even landed a couple of really nice head kicks that made Tim Elliot go for the takedown. Tim Elliot was out there looking like Prime McGregor in the karate stance. He had everything except for the good striking and the good defense. He was switching stances a lot, feigning at range, but then not actually really throwing or landing anything. In my prediction video, I said that Tim Elliott's path to victory was really mixing in the grappling, because as we all know, Sakura is a bit of a slouch on the ground. Look at those rhymes. And Tim Elliot out of the two is the more well-rounded fighter. And even though I predicted Sakura would win, I said if Tim Elliot gets this to the ground, Kai will be in a lot of trouble. I honestly don't know what you do with Sakura at this point. I think maybe you just send him to Dana White's Contender Series. But then also, what do you do with Tim Elliot? Because he's getting up there in age, but he's still able to lock in and get the win when it matters most. Moving on to MVP versus Jared Cananeer. This was one of my favorite fights of the night. I picked Jared Cananeer to win this fight via unanimous decision. I was thinking as logical as I could because of how durable Jared Cananeer is and how much power and strength he has at middleweight compared to someone like MVP who was moving up. It just made the most sense to me. I know MVP is not everyone's cup of tea because he's got that very karate stance, blitz in and out every 30-second type of fighting style, and some people see that as boring, but for me it like builds suspense throughout the fight. Even though MVP doesn't throw all that much, when he does land, it causes some damage, man. Considering that he moved up to middleweight to fight one of the most durable guys in Jared Cananeer, the fact that he was able to knock him down twice or 3 times throughout this fight, I think just shows how effective MVP's style is and how annoying it is for other fighters to try to solve that puzzle. Ian Garry was the only guy that could really solve it in the UFC so far, where, you know, he just really mixed in the zesty clinches. It was zesty, but it worked. I've never seen Jared Cananeer be this stationary in a fight where you can see he doesn't know what to do. He's kind of just marching down MVP with no plan of like how to close that distance and how to really let his hands go and land those combos. As soon as he would start to get a bit of momentum and start to back MVP onto the cage, you saw that MVP would use his angles really well to circle back into the middle of the octagon, and I think that's honestly what won him this fight, was his footwork. I can't remember Jared Cananeer landing anything big in this fight. All the memorable moments for me come from MVP, and like I said, he moved up to middleweight, so I don't think he has all that much power. Even at welterweight, you know, he's not really known for his crazy power, but I think he was able to get those knockdowns because he's just so fast and it catches people off guard. We saw it with Conor McGregor in his prime, right? He might not be the biggest guy, but precision beats strength every single time. Personally, I would love to see MVP back down at welterweight because majority of the top 10 in the middleweight division are high level grapplers, so I really don't see him having that much success in that division, especially now with Chimaev being champion. Could you imagine him versus MVP? Bro, it would be over in 5 seconds. So yeah, congrats to MVP. Moving on to the next fight of the main event, we had Carlos Prates versus Jeff Neal, one of the best KOs of this year. We have to see Carlos Prates versus MVP in Brazil. If the UFC fumbles this like they fumbled so many good fights this year, I'm gonna crash out. I was spot on with this prediction. I predicted that Carlos Prates would knock out Jeff Neal in the first round, and that's exactly what happened. Even Jeff Neal himself said that this fight would be over in round 1, and you know, he wasn't wrong. I said that Jeff Neal tends to be a bit of a slow starter. He takes a couple minutes to really get going, and a lot of the time when he's in striking range, he doesn't move his head. He doesn't really use a lot of footwork. He's got a very stiff boxing stance, which works against a lot of other fighters that have a similar style, like when he fought Shavkat Rakhmonov. The reason that fight was so competitive was because they're both blockheads. They both just like stand at range, swinging punches, going into the clinch and landing those uppercuts. Whereas Carlos Prates is very rangy. He had the height, the reach on Jeff Neal, and Jeff Neal could just not close that distance and get into that boxing range. Carlos Prates from the early bell came out ready to bang. Pause. Meanwhile, Jeff Neal was just staying at kicking range, and Carlos Prates was able to really use those kicks so effectively, especially the calf kicks. Jeff had absolutely no answer for any of them, and if this fight went past that first rounder, that leg was going to be absolutely destroyed. Also, Shavkat went life and death with this man. How good is Carlos Prates? Or better yet, how good is Ian Garry? Even though he lost to Shavkat, I don't know. Carlos Prates is genuinely one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC right now, and I'm just thankful that we have fighters like this that come out ready to just really get that finish. And the fact that this fight ended in a spinning elbow KO, and then also the next fight, the co-main event, ended in the same way, I don't know bro, seems a bit spooky. So yeah, we move on to the co-main event. Leron Murphy scores a round 1 KO. First of all, Leron Murphy and round 1 KO in the same sentence. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say that, but respect, again, this was one of the best knockouts I've seen this year. I picked Leron Murphy to win this fight via unanimous decision, so even though I predicted right in terms of who would win, I was wrong about how it would end. I picked this fight to specifically end via boring unanimous decision. We've just seen it so many fights with these guys coming in from other promotions and then automatically getting like thrusted into the top 5. Like we've seen it time and time again. Dana White just brings these guys in that have a big name from these other promotions that are past their prime, except for Aaron Pico in this instance. And then for some reason just give them a #1 contender fight or even a title fight like we saw with Kaya Sakura versus Pantoja. It just really pisses me off because we get this like stalling of divisions happening where we've got a rightful #1 contender like Movsar Evloev. This fight genuinely should have been Movsar Evloev versus Leron Murphy, but for some reason they decided to give Aaron Pico, someone that's never had a fight in the UFC, a #1 contender fight. You know, if he had won this fight, Dana White would have been cheesing to put him against Volkanovski. And thank God that did not happen, because Volkanovski would have gave him some serious damage. Pico was having a lot of success very early on. He was landing a lot of beautiful combos to the body. And Leron Murphy is just such a master of winning unanimous decisions. But no, he's genuinely just really good at what he does and very effective at winning. And Pico's footwork leading up to the KO reminded me a lot of how Michael Chandler fights, that kind of like crab style in and out. Just really left himself so open. I don't know what he was thinking then. So yeah, hats off to Leron Murphy. Honestly, you've made me a fan, but I just hope this doesn't turn into a Leon Edwards type of situation where Leon Edwards got that lucky lightning in a bottle KO against Kamaru Usman and then just completely fell off after that. And obviously him and Leron Murphy have had very similar careers, but to be honest, I really don't see him beating Volkanovski. But moving on to the main event of the evening, we had Dricus du Plessis versus Hamza Chimaev. Whew. I was perfectly on with this prediction. I said that Hamza Chimaev would win by unanimous decision, absolutely out cardioing Dricus. I'm just gonna say this, only absolute casuals found this fight boring. There was so much tension leading up to this fight, and a lot of the MMA fan base, their issue with Chimaev was that we've never seen him in a 5-round fight. Well, we saw him in a 5-round fight and he out cardioed Dricus du Plessis. This was the most dominant challenger title performances I've ever seen in my life, and I just found it so entertaining seeing how dominant Chimaev was, especially against an undefeated champion. We've never seen Dricus absolutely manhandled like that. We've seen him, you know, kind of get out grappled against Derek Brunson and even in the Whitaker fight, but nothing like this. We knew Chimaev was going to get this to the ground, but it was literally in the first 5 seconds he shot for a takedown and Dricus just didn't know how to defend it. The fact that Dricus got held in the same crucifix position at least 3 or 4 times in this fight just shows how strong Chimaev is, especially considering Dricus is a big middleweight. Chimaev was fighting at welterweight literally like 2 years ago. That being said, I would have liked to see Chimaev try to go for more submissions in this fight. I think he was just having so much success holding Dricus down and just landing those punches that why switch up something if it's working, right? Especially against someone so dangerous like Dricus. And I'm just gonna say this, Dricus is like a freaking cockroach, man, in the nicest way possible. You know, if you give this guy any chance to win, he will take it, no matter how tired he is, no matter how much he's been beaten on. So I can understand why Chimaev, as dangerous as he is, would not even want to give Dricus that chance after dominating him for 5 straight rounds. After this fight, I really don't see anyone beating Chimaev. I think his career will play out very similar to Khabib's, where he will kind of just go undefeated throughout his career, dominate every opponent, maybe have one kind of tough fight every now and then I think he'll just end up moving up or retiring on his own timeline. The fact that this guy landed 529 strikes to Dricus du Plessis' 45 strikes alone says enough. I believe he broke the record for the amount of strikes landed as well. Granted, they weren't the most damaging punches, but I think that's even more humiliating. You know, the fact that he was able to just hold Dricus down in that position shows how much his skill level is above the rest of these guys. He also landed 12 of 17 takedowns. I mean, when do we ever see this in a title fight, especially with 2 undefeated fighters? Also, leading into that 4th and 5th round, you could tell Dricus' coach was getting so frustrated and he had no clue what to tell his fighter because, I mean, what do you say? Also, I've got a grievance. I could not believe that Mark Goddard stood that fight up in one of the later rounds. Like, Chimaev had a dominant position. He was making progress on getting an even better position. And then Mark Goddard, maybe he got bored of the fight, so he just stood the fighters up. Like, you can't do that, man. I seriously do not like Mark Goddard as a ref. He either stops fights way too early or just does does random stuff like this. It's almost like these refs give into the crowd these days, like they're scared of getting booed. I don't know. But yeah, massive win for Chimaev. Honestly, well deserved. Let's all give him a round of applause. But yeah, that's my immediate reaction to the UFC 319 card. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you guys do drop a like on this video. Make sure to subscribe as well. I'm almost at 200 subscribers, so thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.